following the Brian Williams helicopter story, there are now increased questions about Brian Williams' claims regarding his coverage of Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. And I don't know if it is merely because of the admitted inaccuracies with regard to the helicopter story that more people are now looking into the Katrina stories of Brian Williams, or if there were always questions and they simply were not getting attention. But I'll give you the information that we do have. NBC News anchor Brian Williams in the past gave accounts of seeing a body float by in the French Quarter of New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, and even claimed to have caught dysentery from drinking Katrina floodwaters. And both of these claims and others are now bringing up a number of questions regarding the truth of those stories. First is a clip here of Brian Williams talking about watching a man float by in the French Quarter. Take a look.
And when I was down there, I used to be a firefighter, volunteer firefighter in New Jersey. I was wearing the boots that I've owned since 1976. I had them pulled up as waders. When you look out of your hotel room window in the French Quarter and watch a man float by face down, when you see bodies that you last saw in Banda Aceh, Indonesia, and swore to yourself that you would never see in your country.
Then Brian Williams going on in other interviews to talk about how he caught dysentery and that his hotel was also overrun by gangs, that he was rescued, and a number of other details. Let's listen to that.
My 2 weeks there was not helped by the fact that I accidentally ingested some of the floodwater. I became very sick with dysentery. Our hotel was overrun with gangs. I was rescued in the stairwell of a 5-star hotel in New Orleans by a young police officer. We are friends to this day. And it just was, I look back at total agony.
The questions around this, Lewis, are related to the fact that the French Quarter, the original high ground of New Orleans, was actually not impacted by the floodwaters that overwhelmed much of New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, rather. And a spokesperson for NBC did not respond over the last few days to questions about, hey, were Brian Williams' stories about Hurricane Katrina even true? A spokeswoman for the Louisiana Department of Health and Hospitals with regard to the dysentery claim said, dysentery is not even one of the reportable diseases that we track, but that water sources are a possible transmission point for dysentery. Dr. Brobson Lutz, a former New Orleans health director who manned an emergency medical services trailer that was set up in New Orleans, a block from his house in the French Quarter, said he was a fan of Brian Williams, but was dubious of Williams's claims. Quote, "We were never wet. It was never wet. And as far as dysentery," he said, "I saw a lot of people with cuts, bruises, and such, but I don't recall a single solitary case of gastroenteritis during Katrina or in the whole month afterward." Does this prove, Lewis, that Brian Williams lied about Katrina? Of course not. But when you have data that tells you the French Quarter was not wet and dysentery is not something we heard of at all, combined with the questions around Brian Williams' admission of a false statement regarding the helicopter attack in Iraq, everybody is wondering, does Brian Williams just habitually make stuff up?
That's the question. Could a body from somewhere else have found its way to the French Quarter, I suppose? Is
it possible that Brian Williams saw that, but not in the French Quarter and merely forgot where he was?
Right. That could easily have happened. But I think what we're going to see now, and it's already started, is people going back and scrutinizing just about every story Brian Williams has told on the news.
And you would say, hey, listen, David, Brian Williams talked about these things in very specific detail so many times, so it must be true. Well, he did the same thing about the helicopter incident, which he admitted is not true. And at this point, I really don't know what to believe, but certainly significant scrutiny of Brian Williams based on an admission that he over a dozen times told a story that was not true. And we will see what ultimately comes of this.